Yes. Great. Okay, fine. Let's begin with a thank you. It's great. It's great.
He's still
No, you can carry on. It's okay. You can warm up. Moshe, he's the warm-up act. He's the warm-up act.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You don't even need me.
Okay, so let's just begin by thanking our hosts. Martin and Shamrit, we're very grateful. Thank you for hosting us and even longer session tonight and being the doorman and everything else. Thank you. So we're going to start with some ideas on the Parsha, Rosh Hashanah, and just to hopefully try and focus us and try and provide something that's both Parsha and Rosh Hashanah orientated. Very, very simple ideas. Sometimes the simplest ideas are the best. Things we can take with us. I once read a beautiful Yerushalayim. I was busy show the old city. We've all done it. Show around the old city. You know that arch. He says, is that arch? That's one of the oldest arches in the whole of the old city. It's incredible. It's pre-Roman. It's like amazing. You see this arch. It's incredible. And there's a little man who's sitting next to the arch, and he's got baskets he's standing there with baskets, and he's trying to sell something. Old Yiddish man who's trying to sell something, and he hears the conversation going on between the tour guide and his group and his tourists, and he hears him say, "You see that little man there where they're selling that food? Well, right next to him is that arch, which dates back 2,500 years. Can you appreciate it? It's incredible." And the man thinks to himself and says, "This is why the Geula hasn't come. You know when the Geula will come? The Geula will come when people come on tours of the old city, and they walk through the old city, and they see, and the tour guide says, you see that arch, that incredible arch from the Roman era? Well, don't worry about that. Next to the arch, there's a man who's working incredibly hard to feed his family. He's what counts." Right? It's just a beautiful little anecdote, and that's when the Geula will come. When people, instead of focusing on, wow, the scenery, people actually see what really counts. We are always in places all the time in life, and we think we're present, but we're not really present. And that's the problem. We think we see things, and we don't see things because we don't see what we're supposed to see. We don't see what really counts. And there's a pasuk in this week's parsha which highlights that so powerfully. End of Sheni. We'll talk a little bit more in a second about the whole idea of the main theme of the parsha, the idea of the bris, the covenant that takes place in the parsha. Torah says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, this covenant, this bris, is with those who are here today, those who are standing today, and also those who are not here today as well. And the key word here is those two letters, poi, meaning here. Those who are here, those who are present. The idea of being there in the present is incredibly powerful, and I think it's something which is perhaps the most important thing. The most important thing in the sense of how we approach Rosh Hashanah. Volba says in Alei Shur that Lios Hashchina, the phrase uses like this. It says Lios Hashchina poi hi madrega ba'adam. To ensure that the Shechina is here is a madrega in the person. We think of it the other way around. Well, if Hashem wants to be here, he'll be here, and so to speak, right? That's what we think of it, right? He says, no, it depends on you. It's a madrega ba'adam. If you bring yourself to that level, that's when the Shechina will be here. Put this word here, right? Moshe Rabbeinu was told by Kodesh Baruch Hu, here, stand here with me, be here, be present. Don't be anywhere else. Make sure you understand what it is you're doing and where you are. So that's, I think, both a profound thought on the parsha, and also just as our approach to the Yom Noraim. There is a basic question of how to understand the parsha. The Rambam says in Hilchos Milah, I think I've got a copy of it here somewhere. The Rambam says in Hilchos Milah, here it is, like this. He says that he's comparing, we don't have to do the whole thing, he's comparing basically Bris Milah, famously as Shlosha Srei Brisos. There are 13, so to speak, covenants made about Bris Milah. It's a Mishnah, it's a famous thing. But he says that, as to he's comparing how Milah has 13 brisim, and then he says that when you look at the Torah as a whole, there are only 3. So as opposed to bris milah is 13, but the Torah, there are 3 covenants. There are 3 times where a bris is made with the Bnei Yisrael. Of course, we think of bris bein abasarim. That was Avraham Avinu, right? Let's focus on the Bnei Yisrael. The Bnei Yisrael 3 times. There's a covenant, a bris made with them. And those 3 occasions are, he brings 3 psukim, Eila divrei bris, asher tziva Hashem, right? Which is the end of last week's parsha. So the first of the 3. Let's go chronologically. The first one is the rest of that pasuk. Milvad habris asher koras itom b'chorev, right? So there was a covenant made with the Bnei Yisrael chorev, Har Sinai. That's the first one, right? Which, if I'm not mistaken, I think might refer to the chukosai. Either way, it's a bris. It's one occasion of a bris, a covenant. Then you have the one in last week's parsha, the Tochacha, which is another bris, another covenant, and then you have the this week's parsha. Atem v'shamhu oimi, he says Atem tzovim hayom kulchem la'avracha b'vris Hashem Elokecha. That you are standing here today to put you into a covenant with Hashem Elokecha. So 3 times. So the question is, what is the difference between this week's parsha and last week? Why is there a difference? Why is there an extra bris? There's an extra cut. Well, what's going on? We just had one, so we had another one immediately afterwards. What's the difference between the 2? I understand there was one that took place at Har Sinai, right? But now this is all part of the same story. It's not there's nothing, what is new here? What is new here? And the approach that's given by a number of Mefarshim, this is based on ideas from Moshe Shapiro, but he takes it from many other sources. I mentioned it briefly last Shabbos morning, is the idea that, as Rashi brings, that the Bnei Yisrael are terrified and they're scared and they're worried. I mentioned that last Shabbos. They're worried and they're frightened about what's going to be, and they're told you don't need to worry because this is not about a klal. It's not. Although it is, it's not curses. What it's meant to do is bring you into a bris, into a covenant. It's meant to keep you strong. That's the idea. Okay, but the key difference between the 2 is that when it comes to the let's see, I've got it here. Okay, sitting out somehow I've got the actual text. Okay, the Vilna Gaon says that the difference between Parshas Kisovai and Parshas Netzavim is that Parshas Kisovai, we know, is in the Lashon Yochid. It's in the singular. Tocha is all in the singular, right? You, when you do this, all the singular. You, if you do this, you do the singular, right? So he says like this: whenever you see in the Torah that it's said in the Lashon Yochid, the singular form, that means that it's speaking to the whole of the Bnei Yisrael as one unit, right? One unit. If, however, you find the plural form, like this week's parsha, Atem nitzovim hayom kulchem, you are all standing together, then that is speaking to everyone as individuals, right? As individuals. It's also speaking to everyone, but they're all individual people. And that is the key difference. And that fits, by the way, that's very small idea. It explains everything, right? Because it explains what's going on here, right? Pen yesh bochem, that's the whole part of the parsha. Ish, shorish, perish, v'lam. There's someone who gets up and says, Shalom yeli, I'm all right. Yeah, that's what the Torah says here in Parshas Netzavim. I'm okay. I've heard everything, but you know what? I've got my own path. I'm going to cut myself off from everyone else. I understand, but that's everyone. I'm different. I'm separate. I don't have to follow what everyone else does. I can follow my own way. And then the Torah says, of course, not, and terrible things can result. You have to stay part of the klal. So you see, it's about the individual. It's about the individual, right? So we've understood that. Very simple. Kisova is talking about everyone as a whole. It's a bris with everyone. Netzavim comes along and says to each individual member of that, don't think you can cut yourselves off. You can push yourselves away. No, you have to remain part of the tzibur. So it's about the individual. And what does this got to do with Rosh Hashanah? So Rosh Hashanah, we know that we have the same dichotomy. We have the same sort of twin concepts when it comes to the judgment process, right? Ovrim lefonov kivnei moron, right? And there are famously 3 explanations in the Gemara what that means. Like sheep, the simplest explanation is like the sheep pass one by one. There are other explanations as well, but Moron was a place where it was a narrow path to go up to a path. There are 3 explanations given in the Gemara, but all of them come to the same thing, that it's about individuals. That's what it means. Ovrim lefonov kivnei moron. You pass in front of Hashem like sheep, like sheep pass in front of the shepherd. Let's take that simple explanation. It's one by one. Everyone has, there's an individual judgment, individual din on each person, right? But the Gemara also says, "V'kulon niskarin b'skira achas." But they're all also covered, if you like, in one go. They're also covered in one go. So there is a collective judgment as well. Rosh Hashanah is both the individual and also everyone together, right? So how do we understand this? What is going on when we talk about an individual, right? An individual judgment. And also, how are we to understand the idea and the concept of us being able to be held responsible on Rosh Hashanah for the whole world, right? So the idea, the Rambam says, that the world is completely finely balanced, and if you do one thing, it tilts it in the direction, etc., etc. How are we to understand this? How is it possible to understand it? And the answer is that our task on Rosh Hashanah is to be able to perceive ourselves as if we are the only person in the world. That is the task. It's an incredibly difficult thing to do, but that is the task. The task is it something we are able to do? Is it something we are able to succeed in, to be able to be perceived and perceive ourselves as the only person in the world? And that challenge goes right back to the beginning, the very beginning, the beginning of the Bria itself. When Hashem creates the world, there's a medrash, very famous medrash, that the Malachim are debating. They're deciding, should we create man, should we not? And there's one says this and one says that. There's MS and Tzedek, and MS says this and Tzedek says this. You're familiar with the medrash. The whole story. There's a big debate going on. Should we not? One of the Malachim, or group of Malachim says it's not worth it because look what damage is going to do. Others says, yeah, but he can do good stuff as well. And there's a whole debate going on. And then the medrash says like this. Hashem says, why are you still arguing? Why are you still fighting with each other? Man has already been made. That's what it says in the Torah, Na'aseh Adam, right? That's what the Medrash says. Very, very strange Medrash, difficult to understand what's going on. What does it mean that the decision has already been made? So Moshe Shapiro says like this, that debate about the creation of man is never resolved. It was never really resolved, right? There was always two groups, so to speak, in Shemayim saying, look, okay, it's not worth it. They're going to create an atom bomb, yeah? On the other hand, they can do amazing acts of chesed. And that debate is never resolved. But Hashem, so to speak, jumps in and says, I've done it already. Meaning, I've made the decision, as a one-off, man will create. We'll do it, right? In other words, so to speak, I'll take a risk. It's not clear whether it's worth it, whether it's actually going to be something that is going to be successful or not. This successful enterprise. Yeah, of course. You have to understand it on this level. So that's still on the Medrash. So exactly right. But let's take it as the message the Medrash is trying to convey here. And the Medrash Spirit says like this: the Medrash is trying to convey a message. Even though man is created on the sixth day, he forever hangs in the balance. We forever hang in the balance. In other words, it always hangs in the balance, whether it was actually the right thing or not, whether it was really worth it, right? Because of the damage and the harm that mankind can do to themselves, to the world, to other people, right? You think of the rest of creation, the rest of the Bria is incredibly finely balanced. Everything is beautiful, everything is wonderful, everything counters up against each other. There's no bechira, there's no choice. It all happens exactly as it should do, as it's supposed to work. Mankind is the only part of creation that can seriously mess things up through the decisions they make. And that is something which is never fully resolved. We hang in the balance. And therefore, what's going on every Rosh Hashanah, right, is the question is raised once more. The question is raised every year on Rosh Hashanah. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Was it really worth creating you? And this time, it's not the same. As a one-off at the beginning, Hashem says, I'm going to create it. I'm going to create you. But every Rosh Hashanah, I'm going to come back to you. Over in a phonic of Neimora. And you're going to pass in front of me. And each individual person is looked at like they're the entire world. And they're asked the same question. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Was it worth it? What have you done, or what can you do to show that it's worth it? How can you exercise your power of choice this year to show that actually it was the right thing to do to create you? And that is something which is a task on every individual. Because the question is asked on every person is held in balance like that. That's really what's going on Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, the obvious question on that is, this is a hugely tall order. I mean, like, how are we going to survive that? I mean, it's well, the whole world depends on you. How are you going to possibly know? And how are we going to be able to make a difference? Says in Rosh Hashanah like this: we give the answer ourselves during davening, right? The Gemara says, "Bameh b'shofar." How is it that we are able to succeed? The answer is the shofar. The way we recall on Rosh Hashanah the theme of the bris, the covenant, right? What is the brach of Zichronos? Baruch atah Hashem, Zocher habris, right? Zocher habris. That theme, right? The theme of the Akedah, remembering the essence of the bris itself, the covenant itself. That is what keeps us going. That is what enables us to rise to the challenge. When we say Zahayom Tchilas Ma'asecha, today is, in davening we say, this is the beginning of your works, right? Zikaron Liyom Rishon. It's a remembrance of that very first day. It's the same thing. This is the Tchilas Ma'asecha. We bring us back to that very first day, and we are challenged and we are asked, are we able to fulfill that mission? Are we able to do what Hashem, the task that Hashem sets us on this day, once more when it comes around again? So with this, we can understand the idea and the parallel. There are two brisim. There are really two covenants. There's Kisova and Netzavim, right? Kisova is the one that's on the cloud, like we say, we call it Niskarim Eskirach. Everyone is included as one together, because there is also a judgment on everyone together. But then there's also Nitzavim. There's the idea that everyone is an Olam B'fnei Atzmai. Everyone is a world by themselves, right? Everyone has that ability to be able to fulfill that mission themselves. And according to and therefore when we put the two together, we are able to succeed. If we remember the bris, if we're zocher habris, if we remember the essence of what the bris in this parsha is, that speaks to us as individuals, that doesn't assume that we're just part of a group, right? But we have the ability to fulfill that mission itself. That is what gives us the schus to succeed. When we talk about, let me just find this. We talk about Rosh Hashanah being a day of joy. Chedvas Hashem himo uschem. Chedvas Hashem. Right, it's a pasuk in Nehemiah that talks about Rosh Hashanah, and the joy of Hashem will be your strength. Someone pointed out to me the other day that we don't talk enough about this, and that we're all trained to go into Rosh Hashanah being very, very afraid, which is not a bad thing in the sense that it needs to put us on the right path, otherwise we wouldn't take it seriously. We don't focus enough also on this concept of simcha. The idea of simcha and why Rosh Hashanah should be a day of simcha is explained as part of this beautifully by Rav Moshe Shapiro as follows. What is simcha? What is real simcha? The greatest form of simcha is when a person is able to expand their horizons, right? That means to say, if you think about life cycle events. What is the greatest simcha they feel? When they experience a life cycle event, or someone in their family experiences a life cycle event, which profoundly changes the way they perceive the world. So, for example, when you personally get married, for example, right? If you get married, right? Or when kids get married, or they have a grandchild, whatever is a cycle events, right? They broaden your horizons. Beforehand, I was very limited. It was just me. It was just me and my wife. Or it was just me. You understand? All of a sudden, right? Everything is the world. The world has become so much more precious now. The world has become so much broader. The potential, the scope. That brings the greatest simcha, which is why we experience such simcha at those life cycle moments. So he says like this. You know what the simcha of Rosh Hashanah is? The simcha of Rosh Hashanah is being able to stand there and realize b'shvili nevra that the world was created for me. And I have the ability to make the change, to make a difference. And that is the simcha of Rosh Hashanah. It's that idea of mankind being tested, whether they will exercise their power of choice properly. whether we will use our bechira properly. So on the one hand, that's a huge responsibility because I've got to make sure I do. But on the other hand, what a simcha that is. The simcha of broadening your horizons. Same idea. The world has become so much broader now. I'm not living in my own little narrow sort of bubble where all that I have to worry about is what I do today or what I do tomorrow. All of a sudden I can stand there in shul and I can say literally, Bishvili Nevra Ha'olam. The world was created for me. Hashem is looking and saying, what are you going to do? What can you do to make a difference, and to reestablish this year the purpose of the world? Mankind. It's a beautiful, beautiful idea. And I think it's a beautiful balance between the sense of awe of the Yom Noraim and at the same time the simcha, the joy that exists within this day. There's so much more to say. We've got just a few more minutes. Let me share with you one other idea, which is a slightly different idea, but I think it's absolutely. In this week's parsha, you have the parsha of Tshuva, appropriately, the mitzvah of Tshuva. And the word V'shov is mentioned many, many times. Return. It's in Rabbi, right? Return to Hashem again, talks about returning. And then you have a very short and cryptic few psukim, Shishi, Ki ha-mitzvah hazos, asher nekim etzavach hayom, lo nifleisim v'chov l'rechoki, right? It is not in this song, right? It's not too far away. Lo v'shamayim hi, it's not, ki korbi lecha adov ha'moed. Now, many Meforshim learn that refers to the Torah. The Torah is close to you. But there are other Rishonim who say it means the mitzvah of tshuva. It's going back on the previous parsha, right? I think Ramban and others, they say, it means the mitzvah of tshuva is here. It's really close. It's not far away. It's right there. It's accessible. The moment you want to access it, it's there. You're always able to come back. You think you're far away, you're not. You can come back. You're right here, right? That's what they say. So the question is, if it's so near, why is it so far? Basically, that's what he has simplified, right? In other words, if it's true, Torah tells us, it's really close, it's really straightforward. You can access it so easily. So why is it so difficult? Why is it so hard? Why do we find it so difficult? Why is it that to make a real change in something in life is so immensely difficult for everyone, right? Why is it? And he says like this, the answer is very, very simple. The answer is that we all have a difficulty in breaking out of a cycle. That's the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is to change a habit. If a person is in a particular cycle or a particular habit, to be able to do something different, right, is immensely difficult, right? Look how hard it is to come out on a Thursday night, right? It's not easy. You have to rearrange your whole plan, your whole plans, everything. It's not easy. It's not easy because we're creatures of habit. And sometimes we have to turn around and say, no, actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do a change. Vilna Gaon in the Geras Hagra, which he wrote to his family when he left to he originally planned, I think, to go to Eretz Yisrael. I don't think he made it there, but he wrote a letter that it was going to be an ethical letter for them, Musa, right? You remember me quoting this, right? Ki ha-heragel al kol davar shultan, incredible phrase, right? I'm impressed you remember. We quoted it 2 years ago, Rosh Hashanah morning.
Do you know why? Because I never knew there was a Geras Hagra.
Okay. It's always a bit of nachas if someone remembers that. So anyway, Ki ha-heragel al kol davar. That's Rosh Hashanah morning. Ki ha-heragel al kol davar shultan. He says that heragel rules over everything. Habit rules over everything. That's what he says. He says everything is controlled by habit. That's what God wrote to his family. Just bear that in mind. Be honest with yourself and understand your habits and what you normally do. Hold everything. There is and that is this, and that is why it is so near, yet so far. It's so near in the sense that it's so easy because all we need to do is just change a habit. There's such a concept. People talk about this. There's a concept of a keystone habit. You know what that is? Or keystone or cornerstone habit. What's that book? There's a book about it. Atomic Habits. There's another one as well. There's Atomic Habits. Anyway, Power Habit. That's right. That's one I was thinking of. A simple thing. You change one thing, right? Change one thing. Like, for example, someone who's a chain smoker. If they stop smoking, what happens is they end up seeing that a lot of other aspects of their lives actually become a lot healthier, right? Even though they didn't try and change anything else, all they tried to do was stop smoking. But it's a keystone habit. You change one thing and everything else changes. There's a story in the Gemara of Acher, who was also known as Elisha ben Avuya, and he was riding a horse on Shabbos because Acher left the rail. What? Yeah, you remember the story. Yeah, I can't remember where the Gemara is, but he was riding a horse on Shabbos because he went off the rails. Unfortunately, he was and Rabbi used to follow him, and he was still wanted to learn Torah from him. Yeah, and he was right, and he was still wanted to learn Torah from him, and there was a basko which came out and said, right, that everyone is able to do tshuva chutz me'acher, right? And it's a very strange thing. Everyone could do tshuva. Why could Acher not do tshuva? So Acher left the path, okay. And he was unfortunately, he was Machal Shabbos, everything else. He went on, and he can always come back. Why was everyone, I think that's what he responded, I think. He heard that he wouldn't be able to do tshuva. So they all Mephoshim ask, what's going on? Everyone can do tshuva, everyone's got a chance to come back. So the answer is, pshat that I heard was as follows. Acher was not able to do tshuva. Once he stayed that individual, as long as he stayed as Acher, rather than being Rabbi Elishma Navuyo, which he was before, right? He could not change. He's in a cycle. He's in a pattern. He couldn't change. And therefore, there's no possibility of tshuva. It's not that tshuva wasn't there. Tshuva's there behind a very thin screen. But if he remains Acher, and he's still Acher riding the horse on Shabbos, he won't change. And therefore, it's impossible. It's there, but you have to make it. You have to get it. You have to be able to just change that cycle and that heragel and that force of habit, and then it's kikarav elachom oid. It's very, very close to you. So these parshas always this time of year, the Netzavim and Vayelech and everything else they are so, if you like, it's with such precision in terms of the way they guide us through the Om Noraim. I don't think we necessarily always look at them like that. We often look at them like, okay, the short parashas this time of year because we're in shul a lot. But the fact is they actually guide us through. They guide us through the Om Noraim. So I hope these ideas are helpful. Yeah, that's enough of it.
Changing the habit itself is just not enough because
you're
not smoking and then you start smoking. Why is that not different? Because we have the Yetzirah.
Of course, absolutely. No one said no. No one said it was easy. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.